All right, I think we're ready to start NPM. So what is it? It's the Node Package Manager, despite what, if you go to their website, they have a random set of expanded acronyms there. It's not that, it's Node Package Manager. It's the largest ecosystem of open source libraries, and I think Matthew wanted me to show this site right here. Kind of drastic. Yeah. The purple line's is Node NPM, so in case you didn't catch that. All right, so it makes it easy to share, reuse, and update code. It helps us build complex things with simple parts, and it's not just for backend modules anymore. So let's say you're not using Node right now, why should you learn NPM? Well, first of all, the mobile web stack uses NPM and Node. The primer stack uses it, and the Node stack uses Node and NPM as well. Surprising, I know. So it's a little more prevalent than you might have thought. Some of you might be using it anyway, so hopefully you get something out of it. It's going to start pretty basic at the beginning and then we'll build, but if there's a small miracle and we end up with time at the end, we'll even publish a module, a package. Okay, so what's a module? Anything that can be loaded with require in a Node program. So, sorry, this is really basic. We're going to do some terminology and some basic things at first, but we got to set the foundation before we talk about other things. I'm going to try to get the terminology correct throughout the presentation. So you're welcome to correct me when I mix up like package, module, stuff like that. You were going to say something?
So does this apply to the front end as well, not just a Node.js program?
Just Node. Just kidding. Do you want to expound on that?
So if you have a build setup, you'd actually, the same syntax could be used to build front end stuff as well. It doesn't actually, the build tool is typically running in Node, but the end result is a front end project.
Right.
So NPM can be used on any front end project whatsoever.
Thanks for that.
Does it replace Bower? They can.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more projects that have chosen to just use NPM and not Bower. The mobile web stack still uses both.
And I'd probably add that they kind of have different spaces a little bit. Bower is good for importing like libraries that will reside in your global namespace, whereas NPM is probably better for bundling if you're building a bundling tool. I mean, you could do both of those with both of those tools, but they're kind of more geared to do each of those.
Is everybody hearing Jared okay?
Are you guys hearing Jared in the back? Raise your hand if you are. Yeah? Okay. All right. So what's a package? So a few definitions that qualify as packages. The first one's a directory that has a package.json file, which we'll talk about in a second, and then something of value with it. It could also be a gzip of that directory that we described in bullet number 1. It could also be a URL that resolves to the gzip that we described in number 2. And it can be a git URL that when you clone it, it results in the directory that we described in number 1. And to be complete, there's a few other variants on that you can look up if you need them. I promised to describe package.json. It's a text file in JSON format that describes your package and its dependencies, a few other things. There are some required properties, name and version, and then a bunch of others that are not required, but highly useful. I won't read those out loud to you, bore you too much. But it's kind of like a Maven POM file if you came from or are in the Java and Maven world. And I don't know what the other equivalents are in the other worlds. Jim, what's the equivalent in? Is there a NuGet? Okay. All right, jumping around a little bit. There's 3 parts to NPM. The first one is the company. They like to take open source to new places and reduce friction. Those are their own words. the registry, which is free, and then the command line tool, which is open source, and it ships with Node. There are other products in this problem space, so if we ever needed to switch, we could, but this one seems to be a good fit right now. We talked about package JSON. Let's talk about the registry a little bit more. It's kind of a really crappy definition, so I'll give you the summary at the beginning. It's basically a place to share reusable code, but the official, maybe a more official definition is a website that implements the common JS package registry specification for reading and retrieving package information. It's powered.
What was your definition?
I
liked it better.
A place to share reusable code. Should we just stop there and keep going?
No,
Okay. Powered by CouchDB. There's their website, and we have an internal registry as well at that URL. And the ALM guys are working on a replacement for it because the product we're using is called Sinopia, and it appears to have been abandoned by the author. He's not fixing bugs, and it's gone stale. And we'll talk about how to identify products that are in the registry that are doing that later.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you may.
So who's published our internal? Who knew about our internal NPM? Who's published to it?
It's a lot of hands and less hands. A lot less hands. Okay. So you need some functionality in your app, and you head over to the registry to see if somebody else has already built it. And so you search, and the search is full text. And then you need to decide which package to use. So you need to filter down your results. And here's some of the criteria that I've used and I've seen other people use, like how many stars it has, what version they're on, and hopefully they're following Semver. It'll help you there. Downloads, which is kind of a relative number, because every time a build occurs and it ends up downloading dependency, that counts. So it's not like a count of projects using it, it's just a count of downloads. So it's kind of it's a relative number. Number of releases, time since the last release. In fact, let's quit reading these bullets and let's go to their website and take a look. So let's search for Express, for example, which is a fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework, by the way, apparently.
It's in the node stack. And the Angular stack.
So actually, let me back up a little bit there. Let me do it this way. So there's our initial search list. You can see some of the criteria that maybe could help you filter down at first, which are the stars and the version number, and then maybe the author. And by author, you might use that to determine, like if you know the author, that might be an indication that you need to avoid it, or it might be a good one. Okay, so we know this is a contrived example, so we know we're going for Express, so I'm going to select that one. And then there's a ton of other information in here that you can use. Is there a README? Are there instructions on how to use it? There's these badges to see if, for example, their builds are passing, what kind of code coverage they have, what kind of download volume they have. And then they have some stats over here on the right, which are some overlap there, but downloads over time. Oops. What else? So the version, let's take a look at the version. So the version's pretty high, relatively, assuming they're using Semver, and there's 273 releases. That's kind of a pretty good indication that this might be a good package to use. You might verify the license, make sure it's something you can work with. Anything else you guys are using regularly to help you filter down what packages to use?
Last time it was published.
Yeah, it's good when last time it was published to see if it was abandoned. Yep. So, and that could be a relative thing based on the complexity of the package. If it's a bigger package, it might be okay to have more issues, or if you're going to use it, you might look through those issues and see what's outstanding and how long they've been outstanding and what the author's saying. If it's an important thing and the author's saying, I'm not fixing this, then maybe walk away. What else?
To still show dependencies, just go down over to show what dependents are.
Yeah. So that might be an indication of how big it is. You might judge that on a relative basis on what it's trying to accomplish. And then similar to a downloads number, you could look at its dependence and see how many people are depending on it. Yeah, is that good? Any more? Jared?
So on GitHub, you can go there onto their GitHub and kind of view their analytics as well.
Okay, let's.
On that. In addition to open issues, if you click on graphs, I think, and pulse, this kind of gives you an idea of a visual idea of the activity happening.
Pulse as well.
It's kind of more, yeah, just not visual, but same idea.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and go move from a textbook approach to a flow or a life cycle view of it. And this is a pretty weird diagram considering that the nodes in this diagram, pun intended, or maybe not, are actually NPM commands. But think of it this way. On the left in red or pink, we're ramping up our project. We're either starting a new project, which is the pathway along the top, or we're joining an existing project, which would be the pathway on the bottom, or that's kind of overloaded a bit. That could also be that we're using a starter or generator to get us going on a new project. Then the middle section, we're doing our development and testing work. And then, oops, wrong way. And then on the right, we're publishing and deploying. And let's build on it from there. So I guess I should describe the branch, the decision branch there. If you're working on a project or an app, a website, a web application, you would be deploying that. And if you're working on a module or package, you'd be publishing that. And so
Publishing that where?
Maybe the registry. Oh, okay, good. So when we drew this out, we drew two and then realized, oh, they're actually the same. They're really the same workflow. So we just branched it at the end and made one diagram. All right, so let's focus in on that top path of starting from a blank project, and you can use the npm init command with either it'll prompt you for the information it wants to start a new project, or just -- yes, and you'll get all the defaults. That's the way I like to do it. And then it'll lay down that package.json file, which is shown there in the output. It'll take the folder name that you're in and put it on the name of the package. It'll always start the version at 100 to encourage you to follow Semver. It just puts a placeholder for the description. Yeah.
I've noticed that in a lot of the default packages and stuff that's published, we use the ICS license. Is there even such a thing as the ICS license?
I don't know of any ICS license.
Okay.
I don't know what the wording of
think
that
like-
either.
I think like 90% of the ones on our internal thing have that.
They're not ISC that came out of the default from NPM. They're ICS.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Sorry.
Okay.
That's interesting. Somebody should research that. Right. And then I'll save you.
What license? I mean, if there's a license field, with what license would modules be? No license?
So I think the official answer is that you're publishing, you would only have permission to publish internally, and so the license is less relevant. But maybe Mike knows better than I. But if you're publishing externally, you would be working.
Like owned by IRI or something? Or
I think you'd be working with legal, and they'd tell you what to put on it.
Yeah, anything produced by the church is automatically under that license. Yeah, so if you work for the church and you're producing, if you're a contractor working for the church, you're under the
And that's the Intextual Reserve Inc.
Yep.
license. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
But it doesn't give you rights to publish externally automatically.
Okay. All right. I'm going to skip the demo on that because that's pretty simple. Maybe we'll get to more exciting stuff if we don't. The other pathway on ramp up is an existing project or generating a new project. You use npm install. Well, so you clone it first, or you use Yeoman to generate the template for you, and then you use npm install to download the dependencies from the registry. Let's do this in demo mode instead of following that slide, if you don't mind. Okay, so I have a project called My App. Oops. And this, I cloned this. It's one of our example projects that we're working on. Happens to be an Angular project. Let's see what's inside. It looks like I left the node modules folder behind, so I'm going to delete that. Actually, maybe I should leave it there for the sake of time. Nah, I'll do it. If any of you are streaming Netflix, please stop. All right, so what you'll do when that finishes is you'll want to bring in the dependencies that are defined in your package.json. So let's take a look at those while we wait. I've been playing with Visual Studio Code this week. So the reason I started playing with it, I played with it before, it's nice, I like it. But the reason I started playing with it this week is because when you zoom in on this one, even the sidebar, nav bars zoom in as well. Anyway, so if we take a look at that My App, and it has a package JSON like we've been talking about, and it lists the dependencies that it needs here, and a version string to identify what version is acceptable. Also dev dependencies, so for building the project, you'll need, this project needs those dependencies. You done yet? Yes. So let's go get them. npm install, or I for short. I just saved you how many characters over the next bump? So many. Okay. And then it's going to go get them. And while it does that, get another donut. No, okay, no, we'll keep talking about stuff. It's out. Are you wanting to clone it or something, or it's our up and coming Angular one? It's in. Oh well, I can tell you what it is. Right there. So I think the keys that you're looking for are SCM and OWS. If you go to that in your URL, you'll find it. Yeah. So if I understand that right, that flag it will get the dependencies, but not the dev dependencies to run the app. It'll assume that you've built the app, and so you don't need the dev dependencies. Just get the dependencies. Yeah, that's a good question. So on the dev dependency section, those are your build ones. And then the dependency section, those are your runtime ones. So you want to pay attention and actually put those in the right place. It might not matter when you're developing on your local box, because you're just going to do an npm install. It's going to grab all from both sections. But when the ALM's build and deploy stuff happens, they're going to use that production flag and only get your runtime ones. And if you're missing something out of your runtime ones because it's up in the development ones, it's not going to run. So, and then you're going to wonder why and call Howard. And,
But a lot of times you have issues with that because we push and we build an anthill.
Yeah.
And so the line gets really, really good. Like if you're using browser file or web package in your build, you wouldn't really consider that a runtime dependency.
right.
So whenever you push the anthill and you go to build, they're going to use the prod flag and then it's not going to build and everything's going to break. So
Actually, what they do 2 rounds. They do an install with all dependencies, and then they build, and then they wipe out the dependencies, and then they do an install with a production flag and get only your runtime dependencies, and then they deploy it. That's correct, right, Howard? That way, when they deploy, they're not deploying all those extra codes.
So in addition to the double dash production, if your node environment is set to production, it'll also have that same effect. It won't install all the dev dependencies.
Okay, thanks. All right, where were we? Let's see where our install is. So our install's done. So if we take a look at our node modules folder, it went out and grabbed all those dependencies and threw them right there in the node modules folder within the project. So that's considered a local install. And then when you want to use that code, one way is to consume it in your project with an import or require statement. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Source, server, index. Okay, so here's some imports to use those within our code. And when you specify an import without a dot, slash, or any other pathing information, then Node knows to look inside of your local node modules folder and find a directory with a matching name and grab the code out of there. So that's how that wires together. Let's see where we're at. See how much of this slide we covered. Reads from your package, uses dev dependencies and dependencies, puts them in your node modules folder. Okay, so we nailed that. So let's talk about what happens during the develop phase. So obviously you're writing code and you're testing it. But in the context of NPM, we're installing dependencies, identifying things that we need, and using them within our code. Kind of overlaps what we talked about already. But and then this process repeats, so that's why we got the arrow going around in a circle there between those nodes in the diagram.
So I have a question. When you do an install, and will it install will automatically install the dependencies of the things that you are dependent on as well?
The child dependencies.
The child. So like if I
Yeah.
just put an Angular, right?
Yep, and Angular depends on 10 other things.
All of the dependencies that Angular has.
It does.
And all the dependencies that those dependencies have, and so forth.
Yeah, and you might have noticed that we had a pretty long list of dependencies, but when we opened up the node modules folder, that list was even longer, like by 2 or 3-fold even, I'm guessing. So yeah, it's getting children as well.
So does it ever get into like a self-referencing state where you get into a circular reference?
I've never seen it do that.
No, the way it resolves all that code.
Right? So we use commands like, sorry, let me catch up over here. Okay, install and uninstall. Let's actually demo and uninstall real quick. So let's say that you determine that you need jQuery in your project and you want to You want to save that to your package.json file so that when other people check out the project, they get it as well. So use dash dash save dash, dash dash save, because that would be used within the app, except there's a shortcut to that, capital S, not a small s. Small s is silent. Yep. So if we take a look, while that's running, if we take a look at our package.json, because we did the dash s flag, we should see that it added jQuery, and it did. And then if we open the node modules folder, we should see it in there as well. Maybe you should just trust me on that. There it is. Okay. So it did its thing, but then, well, your dev lead tells you that you don't actually need jQuery because the functionality that you were going to use is built into JavaScript now, so you need to uninstall it.
That ever happened?
Never happened to me. So piece of cake, and we do. So that should. Yeah, let's see what happened. So, yeah, looks like it left it here in my JSON file, and as was pointed out, that's because I forgot the dash S flag, but it did remove it from my node modules folder, so let's just redo it with dash S. And trust me, it'll pull it out of the package.json file now. Okay, so let's, oh, that was interesting. Okay. I'll just do that. Oh, I have a shrink wrap file. We're not going to talk about that for a few minutes. Let's delete that.
When you do that, will it delete all of this?
I found that it deletes the child dependencies as well. Yeah, it's smart about it. It walks the tree. Yeah, to repeat that for the recording, NPM will check to see it will delete child dependencies when you uninstall a dependency, but it won't if you need them for other packages as well. All right, where were we? Okay, so let's be, this isn't really in the flow or the cycle that we were talking about, but let's be complete on the install command. You can also do global installations. And that's with a -G or a -- global. So let's take a look at what global installations I already have. We're going to do that with an ls or a list. -G for global, and we don't want to see this big nasty deep tree, so I'm going to set the depth to 0. So I've got some Babel stuff, ESLint, our node generator, a hello someone thing, and npm and yo. So first off, npm puts those in a special place, and that is on a Mac it's user local lib node modules. On Windows, I don't know what that is, but you would run npm, well, that same command, and it would tell you right at the top where that folder is. Oops. The docs say that it's right beside the node.exe binary, but I'm not sure about that. Somebody should check that and let us know. What else? Oh, there's a trend that there are less and less packages requiring that you install them globally. So if you don't need them to be global, don't. In fact, even I don't know if this is a change or not. Maybe somebody could clarify, but I think previously, if you were going to use a package as a terminal command, it would need to be global, but now even those are going local in some cases.
Yeah, you just have to run through an npm script to get to them.
Okay, yeah, Jared said you have to run them through an NPM script to get to them, so because they're not on your path. Is it because they're not on your path?
Or you have to adjust your path, or you have to go exactly where they're installed locally.
Okay. So watch for that, and prefer a local installation over a global installation unless you have to go global. Yeah.
So you have basically have two local repos, right? And kind of Maven-esque where you have one on your box and you also have one local to the project for your node modules.
Yeah. So you have a global one on your box. And then you have a local one for each project. And then to confuse things, well, go ahead.
And this G goes to the global on the box.
Global one on my box. Thanks for that clarification. This isn't, obviously there's the registry, and that's not either of those. That's out on the cloud. And then to confuse things a little bit, there's even a local cache. So anything you've installed, it can be cached, and you can actually work offline. I'll show that later. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a way to use global modules across multiple projects? So I have like 20 node projects going on, and out of them they use the same 15 NPM modules, and I have to install them every time locally within each project. Well, if it's a small module, doesn't matter. If it's something like App Dynamics, which is about 200 megs, I obviously don't want to do that for every project. So I've tried messing around with it, but maybe you guys know if there's a way to install a module globally and use that instance instead of having it installed a local one every time.
I can think of one way, but I don't know if that's the official answer. I'll hold on. I'll bite my tongue for a minute and let Jared speak
So
up.
when you deploy, do you want those things available? Yeah. So then you probably wouldn't want it. You probably wouldn't want it global. I mean, generally, you would reserve global stuff for system scripts or project generation or things like that. Not so much something your package, your particular project depends on.
Use npm link for those packages that create the sim. You'd have them installed once, and then that would symlink to where all the sources are. And then when it installs in production, that npm link isn't there, and you just download it.
Yeah, I think you could use npm link. Based on my understanding of that command, the simplicity is there that it would just work.
Does the caching handle that concern of the time it's taking them to download the 200 meg package?
So that could, if you use, check out the flag --cache--min. I think that's what it is. If we get to it, I'm not sure when we get to it, but if we get to it, I'll demo it. And that will let it pull it from your local cache instead of grabbing it again.
My concern is not that it's pulling from like that.
But
is not
disk
my concern,
space?
it's the space when I'm doing the same thing across 20 projects.
So I think in a perfect world, best practices say install it locally. But if you're in an imperfect world and disk space is an issue, you might have to pull out the link tools.
Just gotta be aware when you publish, actually deploy, you're gonna have to adjust things to make sure that everything's
So if a project has 20 npm link modules, does that take precedence over npm install? If I run npm install the next time, would it override my links, or would it continue using my links?
I'm not sure how that works.
You have to, so on the links stay unless you delete them or unlink them. So if you run an npm install again and again, they'll stay there.
If your workflow is to delete node modules and then doing an npm install towards the end, that would probably resolve that.
I don't. So do you? Okay. All right. Let's see where we're at. Yep. I think we're done there. Oops. Back to our slides. All right, so let's talk about when we get to the publish and deploy phase. Finally, right? And the commands we're going to use there are shrink wrap, but first let's spend 35.5 seconds on semver. You should use semver, and the basic idea is that the first number is your major version, the second number is your minor version, the third number is your patch. So how do you roll your version numbers when you publish or deploy? You roll the major version when you make a breaking change, regardless of whether it's feature or bug. You roll the minor version when it's a feature but it's compatible, and then you roll the patch version when it's a backwards compatible bug fix. So when we looked at our package.json, we saw our dependencies section and we saw the name and then the version, and that's actually a version. That version string is actually a range. And there are several ways to specify a range. In this case, you see those carets in there. That's the range. That's a specific range indicator that says that it will accept versions that do not modify the leftmost non-zero digit. So for Express, notice that it's 4.13.3. So 4.13.4 would be acceptable, but 4.14 would not. So it would stay in that 13 range. For .env, they have a 0 in that middle position, so that one's a little different. 2.0.0, so 2.9.9 would be acceptable, but 3.0.0 would not. So you would stay in the 2XX range. Another way to, yeah. So how many people realize that there was that level of nuance to the versioning, that a position of a 0 changed the way that behaved? Raise your hand if you realized that. So a few of you, good.
Will you re-clarify what the 0 does?
So the 0, so the rule is it will accept versions that do not modify the leftmost non-zero digit. So when you have a 0 digit in a position, you're telling NPM that it's okay to change that digit up.
If you put a 1 there, it will never change that 1.
Right? If you put a 1 there, it'll never change the 1. So if that's not the behavior you wanted a 20x, you would need to use a different range indicator to get that. In fact, it is actually 2.0.x or star would get you that. Okay, keep flying here. So shrink wrap. Finally, we get back to shrink wrap, which was in our life cycle there.
Now, will it automatically update, or do you have to manually do that?
Let's get to that in a minute, if that's okay. Okay, so we're ready. NPM shrink wrap locks down the versions of your dependencies so that you can control exactly what gets deployed or published. You could do those by locking down your ranges by hand, but it's not recommended. It's preferred to just use the shrink wrap command. So you run npm shrink wrap, it produces that file right there, npm shrinkwrap.json. And when that thing's present, the install command honors the exact versions specified there.
So the error that you mentioned was adding Express, because Express was in the shrink wrap, will let you add that?
I'm not sure of that exactly, because npm install honors the shrink wrap file and actually adds to it as well. So that error the error we saw was probably something else. So yeah, I meant to mention that too. So thanks for bringing that up. Typically, you would commit your shrink wrap file to your version control system, maybe on your release branch or something, and then when you start up your next development cycle, you would delete it and start over again and allow patch versions and even make minor or major version changes to your dependencies at the beginning of your cycle. And then one note is that npm suggests you shrink wrap your apps and not your modules. Let your consuming apps do the shrink wrapping and don't do that in your modules. Should we skip the demo? Let's skip the demo. Raise your hand if you really want to see the demo. Not you, Mike. All right. So let's step outside of that cycle and cover a few more things so that we can be more complete about it. Updating dependencies, somebody mentioned. So npm outdated, let's just demo this one. Actually, let me move a folder. One more app. Yep. All right. Uh-oh. this command will tell you the status of the versions in your package. So, oh, that didn't work. Somebody told me I needed to rename that, didn't they? Thank you. All right, so the first column is current. That's what you have installed in your node modules folder. And then what's wanted is the highest version that's available that would still honor your package.json. And then the latest is what they found out in the registry. And so if it's red over here on the left, that means there's an upgrade available within your range. And then you would look between wanted and latest to see which packages have upgrades outside the range. So how do we update those? npm update. It will actually install new versions within your package.json range. So, oops. Let's do that. That'll take a minute. If you want to break out of the version range, you have a couple of options. You either manually modify your package.json or uninstall and reinstall each of the dependencies. That's a one-at-a-time thing. I'm not aware of any other shortcuts, but I'm betting there's some tools, some npm tools available to do it. Say that again, I didn't hear. Possibly, I haven't looked into that. You might be able to specify a version for the recording. Okay, so this one, npm update told us that it updated browser sync, cross spawn, and request. So the 3 red ones got their versions bumped. So so to place that back in the life cycle, that's usually at your ramp up time, maybe at the beginning of starting new development on a project, or you just released and you're starting development again. You do that at the beginning. Oh, sorry about that. All right, anybody seen that one? E-access error? And you fixed it by running sudo in front of your install command? Ah, all right, we're gonna fix that. What's that? Sudo, you don't know what sudo is?
No, but I know what sudo is.
Sudo. Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate that. This is sudo, however you want to say it. We'll arm wrestle over the proper pronunciation after. Okay. I think your phone's ringing. All right, I don't think this one applies to Windows folks. Can anybody tell me one way or the other? You do? I think I hear you do sometimes. Okay, so maybe the solution would be different, or for sure it will be. But so you have 3 options: install node with homebrew, which sets your permissions properly. You can use an alternate global package directory, so you just set some config and it points it to a new location, and you have the proper privs be in your home directory typically, and this solves that problem. Or you can change the directory permissions on the default location, which on a Mac is user local bin node modules. So we've typically done option 3, so I'll show you that one. On npm's docs, you run this first command where you change the owner of 3 directories. You don't have to follow, I don't really want to go through the syntax of that command, but basically you're saying make the owner of the user local lib node modules, user local bin, and user local share directories, make them owned by me. And we haven't needed to be so drastic. We've just targeted the user local lib node modules folder, and that's been enough for us. So that'll get rid of your e-access errors, and you don't have to sudo anymore. Hooray, right? All right, you can, sometimes maybe you're on an airplane or something, you want to work offline, or you're at a conference with 600 people in the same room and 4 devices, 3 in their pocket and 1 on their lap, so you need to work offline. So there is a cache, like we mentioned. That command will tell you where the cache is. And if you want to use the cache instead of going against the registry, you can add that --cache--min with 6 nines, and then it'll just use your cache. Okay, some troubleshooting tips. If you run into errors and you don't understand the error message, the first thing I do is delete my node modules folder and run npm install again and get another donut while I wait for it to finish. Next thing I do is check my node and npm versions, make sure they match what's specified in the engines property in your packages JSON. Does anybody else have any other tips? What's that? Roll back your change. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
For not having to use sudo on links and Unix spaces, you could also use nvm or nvenv. It allows you to manage multiple versions of Node on one machine, and it installs all of your modules and global modules to your home directory, so you actually don't need a sudo command to install, but it still adds it to your path, so you can still run them anywhere you want.
Okay, so let me repeat that for the recording because I'm pretty sure that one didn't get picked up and it's a good one. So another solution for those sudo access permission problems is to use nenv and or what else was nvm. I use n, but I don't think it solves the sudo problem. But those manage your node and npm versions for you, and then they also put your global packages in a different location.
Does that work the same as RVM or RM for installing multiple Ruby versions, or PyM for PVM? And there's pretty much like a version for like any type of scripting language now.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. I failed to put N or NENV in these slides. Howard?
So I just wanted to add too, in your package.json, you can specify any version of Node and will install that version, but be careful because if you're going to then deploy to the cloud, I think they only support up to version 5.7.
Okay, so Howard just pointed out that ALM can support any version of Node just specified in your package, but check with Cloud Foundry to see what versions they support currently, maxing out at 5.7.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I checked. It was 5.7.
And I think there's a floor to the versions that they'll install too. They won't go to a certain age. Matthew?
Also be careful with in your engines which npm versions you use, because Cloud Foundry doesn't always have those versions.
Okay, and watch your npm version too, because Cloud Foundry doesn't have all of those available.
Those are all documented in the back of the UI, the ui.cf.ls.org. We have the engines and the node modules, node versions. That's a database.
See also the back on ui.cf.ls.org.
Maybe ask if everyone's clarification on engines field does.
Does anybody who knows what the engines field in package.json does? Raise your hand. Okay, sounds like we should cover it. Do you want to give us a quick on that one?
When you deploy on the cloud, basically it tries to provide hints to where you're deploying, which version of Node you're going to install and run your app on. That's the short version.
Okay, thanks.
Or npm.
So I have a question. Can you install? You have multiple versions of the same package. It's like you're gonna have like Angular 1.3 and 1.5.
Yeah, so this was a change from npm version 2 and version 3, but in either one you can have multiple versions of dependency or child dependency. In version 2, it was all hierarchical, so if dependency A required dependency B would be found in the node modules folder inside of dependency A, and then it would just tree out from there, and that's why Windows users would get the error about the path being too long. So in version 3, they flattened it, so all dependencies and children dependencies will be at the root, flat, unless there's a version conflict. And when there's a version conflict, the first one that it finds ends up in the root, and the second one that doesn't have the same version, that dependency, it ends up nested like it used to be in in the old version of NPM. So you would find it in the node modules of the package that required that different version.
That works for child. What if I want to install Angular?
Two parent versions of a package. I've never tried that. Has anybody tried that? No? We should try that. Report back on Slack what you find if you try that. Node versions. So in case you didn't know, even versions of Node will have long-term support. So that's currently the 4 line. And odd versions will get the latest features. And then we've already talked about NPM 3. You get the progress bar, a few other things, but mostly the progress bar is the cool thing. Okay, maybe the flatness. Maybe that's cool, but I like the progress bar. Node 4 ships with NPM 2, so you're not getting the flatness out of if you're using Node 4. Why would you use Node 4? Oh, well, maybe you want your local laptop environment to match what you're going to go out to production. So maybe you might upgrade your NPM and you to get version 3 and to get those flat features. And so you would do that using the tool itself. So you tell NPM to install itself globally. Pretty awesome, right? Okay.
Very meta.
Oh, but I'd like to just warn from experience that if you haven't choned the right directory and you get the e-access error,
You
right,
blow away
it tries to delete your files first, and then it'll reinstall stuff. So if you don't have your permissions right, you can do npmi global npm. It'll delete npm,
and then you
won't
got
be able to install it again.
and then you got nothing.
So you just
Then-
cry. Yeah.
Then you use your
npm like suicides itself.
yeah. So if you end up in that state, you either just go download the binary from Node and reinstall it, or you use your version manager like N or NENV to get yourself back to a good state. Yeah, thanks. I've run into that too. Remember to when you switch versions of Node or NPM, make sure you delete your Node modules folder and reinstall.
Like for a deploy, before you do a deploy or head to a deploy, I'd recommend doing that in the reinstall just to make sure that you haven't forgotten the -s flag along the way.
True. Jared just recommend doing that before a deploy or maybe before, indicating that you're ready to go through the QA testing phase to make sure you didn't miss a dependency with a --save flag. And that's one good reason. Another good reason is that your tree can actually end up different depending on how you installed through time. NPM says it shouldn't make a difference on runtime, but just in case, if you blow away your node modules folder and reinstall, you can just make sure that it matches. Okay. Make sure you communicate these kinds of changes to your team lest they lynch you. There are some NPM configuration files, and there's a hierarchy to the way that they get consumed. So I'm not going to go through them, but know that they're there in case you want to do something like maybe you have personal projects and work projects and you want different information. Maybe the registry is different for those. You could set those in the config file the config file that's project specific. All right, HydroWorm. Anybody raise your hand if you've heard of this? Okay, a few of you. So in theory, malicious code could spread through the NPM ecosystem because NPM lifecycle scripts allow arbitrary commands. I didn't really talk about lifecycle scripts, but basically when you install a package, at certain phases, there are phases during that install event, and there are hooks into those phases that arbitrary scripts could be run, and you'll actually find those. You'll find that info in your package.json also, so it's interesting. You can look there. But because of that feature, those arbitrary commands can be run on install. And then Semver allows for a range of versions of dependencies to be installed. And then persistent auth, after you log into NPM to do a publish, that login stays there. So that means that one of those scripts could potentially publish a new version of your module for you without you knowing. And then the central registry or repository then acts as the distribution point with all the builds distributing out that malicious code. So there's some mitigation steps, and we recommend that you take them. Don't stay logged into NPM, so use NPM logout. Use NPM shrink wrap to lock down your dependency versions so that when you're about to go to production, you don't end up with that bad code. Disable install scripts with either that top command will do it for that one install, and the bottom command will do it for, we'll set it in your config and disable those install scripts on all your install commands. So choose one of those. And then don't install packages you don't trust. Kind of sounds familiar, right? And then NPM's working on some mitigations. They're working on just scanning their own registry for vulnerabilities, and then they have two-factor authentication in their private stuff, but they're working on adding it to their public stuff. Yeah, and that's it. Any questions about Hydra or any other interesting tidbits? Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I find it very useful to put an npm.rc file through your project since we have an internal npm registry, and that internal npm registry aggregates the global npm registry with whatever we publish internally. So that way, if you ever do have a dependency on an internal package, then you know that it's gonna work regardless of whether or not somebody's added that registry to their global npm.rc. You know it's in the package, it's in the project npm.rc, so you don't ever have to worry about it.
So he was talking about this file right here, where that's in my project. It's in the root of my project, and we're telling, we're setting the registry. So any command that any npm command that we use is actually going to hit that registry there, which is our internal registry. And that registry does proxy, thanks for pointing that out, it does proxy packages from the global registry as well. So if you want Angular, obviously that's not one of ours, but our registry will proxy it through. If you find yourself at home, you might need to firewall, make a VPN connection in to hit our registry. Yeah, Jasper.
So I've had a kind of security question ever since the left pad debacle of 2016. Right, so this guy got upset over some political thing and deleted his module, and which was a dependency for like thousands of other popular modules.
And he broke the whole internet. Did you hear that?
Yeah, according to CNN, right?
Yeah, I think it was like a copyright
Yeah,
thing.
so he deletes his module, and that broke a bunch of things.
Yeah.
What if instead of deleting his module, he did a minor version or a patch upgrade and put malicious code in there? I guarantee 0 people have ever looked at the source code of left pad until this was used.
Right.
Any Joe Schmo could add malicious code to their own packages.
Yep.
And they might be consumed by millions of users.
It
and
is.
They're running on servers that usually are behind firewalls and have admin rights and access to things. So I mean, I guess that's something that shrink-wrap hopes to mitigate.
It does mitigate it, exactly.
Yeah.
But it seems like a huge trust issue. I mean, we're basically trusting these thousands of. Because I mean, I can trust Babel, but Babel installs 10,000 dependencies.
Yep. So this is NPM's response, and I don't expect this to give you warm fuzzies, but they basically say NPM is largely a community of benevolent, helpful people.
But you know what I mean? Like, what if the guy that makes Lodash is approached and by somebody gives the Lodash guy $1 million to put in some malware, and it's only in there for an hour.
Yeah.
Until it gets removed.
And it's on how many servers after that hour?
In that hour, how many deploys is it going to go out to? Live prod boxes. Yeah.
So shrink wrap is our primary defense there. So that should protect our production installations at 100%. There's this small window of time where maybe you updated it without reviewing it, but in theory, you've shrink wrapped before you've gone through the QA cycle. That doesn't mean that they didn't put a sleeper in there.
Yeah.
So there could be a
Because shrink-
sleeper,
Shrink,
but
shrink wrap only works if we're reviewing the source code of our dependencies before shrink wrapping, and I'm not. And I'm not looking at Lodash to make sure it's still Lodash.
yeah, there is a hole there, for sure. Has anybody heard of any, so far, I'm not saying it, because it hasn't happened, it won't happen, but I'm saying so far, has anybody come across a
I
problem?
haven't heard of it happening, but it seems like
It's a
there's
possibility.
There's a huge vulnerability that we're saying that, well, people are mostly good and we're just trusting it.
Okay. Yeah. I think we're out of time, so I don't have a response to that. There, on that happy note, yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Jared?
Other than it's theoretically possible.
Yeah.
However, I mean, anytime you consume any open source library or even closed source, it's the same issue. I mean, if you didn't write every line of code yourself, you're susceptible to the same thing. And who does that?
Yeah, and maybe at a certain security level, our apps need a full code review. I don't know. Okay. All right.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Rohit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So referring to the same issue, I think one of the bigger problems with that was that could potentially break your deploys and your apps. And there are some build processes that you can use to build these modules out so they don't actually go and fetch the modules when they're being downloaded. So if you guys could maybe establish a standard around that, or I don't know, come up with a solution for that.
Let's talk more
Look
about
at
that.
it. Yeah.
So it's just about wrapping the modules before you deploy, so you don't actually fetch the modules while you're deploying.
Yeah.
Since you already wrapped them, it doesn't matter if the dependency is up or not. You still have your existing versions.
So if you commit your node modules folder, for instance, into your version control and you push that to Cloud Foundry, Cloud Foundry won't re-download them. It'll use them. So some people like to do that. They'll actually commit their node modules folder as well.
So we're going to cut it off. Swing up, and if you want to talk some more about this particular issue and how to mitigate it, and love suggestions as to how we can better do that. Before we go though, raise your hand if you've used Node in an active project that has gone to production, other than for just pushing project assets, not for that, but just for building an application service or an enterprise service or anything. Okay, so that's about 90% of this room. So that's good to know. Thanks. Anything else for Bruce?
You cut them off. They're not going to raise their
Okay,
hand now.
Bruce Campbell.